can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
For content and logical thought in the community we live in. But he's back after a fortnight. The doc from Sydney, Dr. Ben Fordham, who has just toppled them, I'm told, toppled the ratings, has been a juggernaut, a ratings success. Is that right, Doc?
G'day, Sam. How are you, my friend? Radio ratings. Yes, we've done pretty well. We came out on top over our mates Kyle and Jackie O. And the other news is that Kyle and Jackie O are into Melbourne now, as you know, Sam. And I know we've discussed this before, and we were speculating about whether they were going to work in Melbourne or not. History says that people don't work when they switch between cities and try and dominate another market. And I think we both agreed that maybe Kyle and Jackie O will be different because of their unique brand of radio and humour. But so far, not so good. They haven't managed to really make a big imprint on Melbourne just yet. So maybe your mate Steve Price was right, and maybe I was wrong, because as I told you previously, I was thinking that maybe they do okay, maybe they won't, I don't know. And then Pricey came out and said, no, they'll bomb. And because I'm used to Pricey being wrong most of the time, I thought maybe Kyle and Jackie O will win Melbourne. But at the moment, the Melbourne listeners are sticking with the Melbourne-based hosts. The
late Stan Zemanek, I think, found out that you couldn't transgress or transfer or transpond or whatever you call it. He tried to do it.
Transgender?
I'm not sure if Stan was in...
Zemanek was transgender?
Yeah, no. I only met Stan once. He was a feisty young man. I think his pronouns were he and him, but God knows in this day and age, Doc. So
I think Stan learned the lesson, and Darren Hinch learned the lesson, and Steve Price learned the lesson. It's very difficult to switch from one city to the other. But, mate, how good was Stan Zemanek? We were only talking about him on air this week because it was the anniversary of Stan's death. And so I dug out some tapes of Stan Zemanek on the air. I mean, mate, he was just a juggernaut, and he was around long before cancel culture came around. And he used to actually have a warning at the start of his show, and it would sound an alarm. It would say, warning, if you're a dole bludger, a greenie, a Labor voter,
Fantastic.
And then it would just launch into Stan being Stan. And, mate, he was one of a kind. And I actually shared on the anniversary of his death a prank call that I made to Stan many years ago on radio. I was pissed in the back of a taxi, and I know Stan well, but he was bagging the then boss of Channel 7 at the time, David Leckie. So I thought, I wonder whether he'll go to water if I call in pretending to be David Leckie. And sure enough, he did. He was sucking up to me. Just before Stan died, I went and saw him for our final catch-up, and I said, look, Stan, because this is probably the last time we're going to see each other, there's something I need to confess. And I confessed to him that prank was in fact me and not David Leckie.
And he never knew up until then?
No, well, he claimed, he goes, I knew it was you. I said, bullshit, Stan, you did not. You would have called me out on the spot. But those were in the days when people said whatever they wanted to say. But then again, I do my best to say what's on my mind, whenever I'm on the radio, and it seems to be working for us. I think there's a real hunger out there, Sam, and that's why your podcast has done so well, because there's just so much BS and political correctness that goes on. When you have people to just say it how they think it and say it how it is, there seems to be a real market for that these days, which is good. It's encouraging.
Well, we've gone to the next level. I've already gone to the next level with Dick Wollstonecroft. I am saying this absolutely, that Joe Biden indirectly, and the CIA and the FBI and the Secret Service have tried to take Donald Trump out before he was inaugurated at the RNC convention, which is on now. This was a deliberate attempt to assassinate him by the powers that be. Okay,
so let me just check for a moment. So Joe Biden was involved?
Joe Biden's FBI, CIA, and the Secret Service. Joe wouldn't even know he didn't even know he didn't know that the head of the Secret Service was a woman called Kim Cheetle. He said, yes, I haven't spoken to him yet, but I'll be speaking to him later. So he has no idea what's going on, as you know, but I'm saying this is a deliberate attempt to assassinate Trump so he won't become the president.
All right, well, here's my take on the whole thing. The head of the Secret Service decided to introduce diversity quotas
30-30
some time ago. So, 30% of all the hires have got to be women. In other words, it's not the best man or the best woman for the job.
It.
It's based on, okay, we're going to hit some kind of quota. We know that gender quotas and diversity quotas do not work. So, as a result of that, the Secret Service is off its game. In fact, there's a top journalist who wrote a book about the rise and fall of the Secret Service a few years ago, warning that the Secret Service was not what it used to be. And my take is they were just complacent, they were lazy, they were there on the spot, obviously looking at Donald Trump and looking in other directions, but had not looked outside the perimeter. And this bloke who was a 20-year-old dunce who turns up there, he was acting suspiciously outside, and then someone went, oh, he's looking a bit suspicious. He was kind of eyeing where they were doing the metal detecting, but he was not going near the metal detectors himself. And so someone said, where's that guy gone? And all of a sudden, he's disappeared. We now know that he'd got up on the roof, and you heard all of these people saying, there's a guy on the roof with a gun. And this is while the President Trump was still speaking, the former president, who of course still enjoys the title as they all do in the US. And 2 minutes then go by from when people are screaming at the police to say there's a bloke on the roof with a gun until the shots were fired on Trump.
And you think
I
it,
just think it's a
and you think, Doc?
I don't think it's a. I do not think it's a conspiracy. I do not think it's an inside job.
Oh.
I think that this is a dopey 20-year-old kid who was able to outwit and fool the people who are supposed to be the smartest brains when it comes to security and intelligence services. I think, Sam, if you were going to conspire to kill Donald Trump, I don't think you'd be engaging the services of some 20-year-old dope who had no friends at high school, who was crawling on a rooftop while people were screaming out.
No.
I think there are other ways to take out a high-profile person like Donald Trump than that. It's a little bit like the people who think that Princess Diana was killed by the royal family. I say to those people as well, if you were going to try and kill someone, I think a car crash is one of the strangest ways to try to do it, right? Because, you know, there's a chance the person's not going to die. I mean, I'm not buying into the conspiracy, but Sam, that's why people listen to this podcast, because you say what you think.
So, but Doc, I agree about the boy. Would you send a boy to do a man's job, so to speak? But I am saying they took no interest. They thought if it happens, it would be great. They had no drones. They had no security on the building. They had no. They had no answers at the press conference. That woman. They had no notice. They took no notice of the rally goers who said there was a bloke up on the roof with a gun. They had no helicopters. They had no CCTV. They couldn't even unblock the bloke's phone for 3 days because AT&T or Apple wouldn't. Seriously, if someone's just tried to shoot the ex-president of the United States or the president of the United States, you would take the phone and you'd say, we don't give a fuck what you say, mate. We're opening up this phone. I'm telling you, they've turned a blind eye to it. They thought it's a pity he didn't kill him, but we're not. We took no steps to make sure it didn't happen. They are absolutely complicit.
Oh, there's no doubt they're complicit, and I agree with you about all of those missed opportunities. As far as getting into the phone is concerned, there is a precedent for this because you'll remember the Boston Marathon bombers.
I do.
Same thing happened with them. When the FBI wanted to get into their phone, Apple, big tech said, no, I'm sorry, but they're Apple users and their information is protected. So there was a massive fight over the Boston bombers and their phones as well. But you're right, they missed every opportunity. They're supposed to be the best in the business. And look, Sam, I've had some experience around being around an American president. Many, many years ago, Bill Clinton was down under and he was at Sydney Airport and also in Canberra. He also made his way to Port Douglas. But while he was in Sydney and getting ready to fly up north to Queensland, I was on the tarmac at Sydney Airport with a bunch of journalists, and we were just there to see him get out of the car, walk along the red carpet, and get onto his plane. That was it. It was 30 seconds. Just to stand there 300 metres away and to see the president for 30 seconds, we had to go through extensive security checks. I can remember I was holding a radio microphone with a little recorder, and the Secret Service person said, "Turn it on for me." And I said, "It doesn't turn on, it just records. There's no on-off button." Well, this bloke was as suspicious as all hell. I mean, they went through all of us, and they said to us, I said, "Is there a chance the president will walk over here and say hello to us?" They said, "No way in the world." Bill Clinton did do that in the end. He came over and shook everyone's hands. We went through hours of security checks just to stand there 300 metres away. The idea that this bloke was allowed to be on a roof about 130 metres away, when you consider that snipers working for the American government are trained to shoot people at 800 metres away, 900 metres away. This guy was just a football field away, and he was still able to crawl up on that roof in front of everyone while people were watching on. I mean, it is just so embarrassing.
You're coming round to my... You cannot say that, Doc, and then not come to the conclusion that this was, they thought it's, let's hope it happens. They, and the cow eyes and the gnashing of the teeth when it happened, and the false, sickening hypocrisy of saying, it's a shocking thing. They couldn't believe they couldn't believe their luck that someone had a shot in him, but they're only disappointed that that he wasn't shot dead.
I think to suggest that the members of the Secret Service who dedicate their lives to keeping, the president and other VIPs alive, the idea that they would be somehow in on some discussion about let's turn a blind eye and allow this person to be shot, I think that that's fanciful. But do I agree that they are complicit in it because of the mistakes made? Yes, I do. But I don't think anyone was sitting around in a room and planning it. I mean, I just don't buy into that. But look, I'll say this about Donald Trump. Trump understands how to capture a moment. And the moment that he decided, okay, I've survived this thing, and then the Secret Service said, okay, we need to get you out of here, and he said, wait, and then lifted his fist up for everyone to see, that was the reminder about Donald Trump's understanding of how to communicate with people and how to market himself and how to market the United States of America. It showed strength, and it just blew the whole Joe Biden train out of the water as if it wasn't already off the tracks already. I mean, Biden, as we know, was already, the bloke who was never going to win this election in November. But, when those photographs came out and you got Trump there with the blood on the side of his face and the American flag flying over his head, and, his insistence on putting the fist up in the air to show everyone that he was okay, it just goes to show that Trump is unbeatable.
The CIA and the FBI have colluded with the Biden administration to engage in warfare, political warfare on Trump for 9 years. They've had the Russia hoax. They've impeached him twice. They gave him on 94 indictable charges, all of which have now just bitten the dust because people have suddenly realised that this is a conspiracy to get a man who is going to be the 47th president of the United States off the scene by allowing a boy to get up on a roof. The woman, Cheetle, she said, we didn't put people up there because it was a sloping roof and we didn't want to injure anyone. I saw her say it. I saw her at a press conference. And why wouldn't you sack her for that?
Oh, well, look, can you imagine the conversation when Trump becomes president in November and calls the boss of the Secret Service into his office and says, "You're fired"? I mean, that's exactly what's going to happen there, Sam. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But, I mean, one of the most memorable and historic moments in American political history. But now that you've solved this conspiracy around the Trump shooting, can you just answer this one question for me? Who killed JFK?
Well, your friend, Tucker Carlson, says he has it on almost first-hand information or first-hand knowledge that the CIA are responsible for that as well. Don't they?
You know what? I've got an old boss who was a influential figure in my career. His name's David Hurley.
Yes.
And he was a executive producer at Channel 9 for many, many years. And he used to have this line, right, where he would say, always back the F up over the conspiracy. And I know you like a conspiracy, and I do too. But just don't discount the fact that some kid who's lonely and bullied and a complete weirdo and loves his guns turns up there and thinks there's no way in the world that I would be able to get myself into a position where I'm going to be able to shoot this weapon. I'm not even convinced that he hated Trump. His family were pro-Trump. They had Trump signs in their front yard. I reckon he just turned up there and he thought, look, I'll just see how close I can go. He probably wanted to be killed by the Secret Service, and he got up on the roof and couldn't believe his luck. All of a sudden, he's got a clear shot and he takes it. I mean, imagine there was someone there who was a trained shooter, and imagine Trump didn't turn his head at that last second. If that had happened, Trump would be dead and America would be dealing with another civil war.
You're too forgiving, Doc. That the very fact that he could climb up on a ladder and people alerted the authorities that there was someone on the room with a gun, they thought, let's hope it happens, and then we'll pretend and protest and do the cow-eyed stuff. And you wait till they investigate what was on his phone. How much of that will they release if it's proved suddenly that it was a bit of a conspiracy to get him out?
Yeah, apparently they've found text messages between him and Don Scott.
Very
See,
good.
we've all been wondering for the last 6 months, where's Don? Where's Don?
Well,
and we suspected that he was working on some secret project. Well, you wait. When they get into this bloke's phone, I bet you there are constant missed calls from Don Scott because, as we know, Don rings a lot of people and annoys them. So this bloke was probably brushing Don's calls.
Well, you love this. Sue rang him up the other day. I was just not in earshot. I was in earshot, but she rang him up because she said, I'm going to ring Don. I haven't spoken to him for a while. She spoke to him for, I reckon, 10 minutes. She's here listening to this, and he'd not once asked, because he knew that she was up here with me. He not once asked how I was or what was going on. He just spoke about he is a tripper.
Hang on a moment. Hang on. There's a conversation between Sue and Don. Why does Sam just presume that Sam is going to be the topic of conversation?
No, I don't presume that at all, Doc. I don't presume that. But he asked.
You got it in one, Ben.
He asked.
I've got it in one. Because you know what, Sue?
What?
Do you know what Sam suffers from? This is what it's called. Remember this? It's called main character energy, right? And there's nothing wrong with it. Just look up main character energy. Sam Newman has got main character energy, and that is that he just presumes that he is the star of this film and everyone else is part of the supporting cast.
Now, Doc, Sue Stanley rang up Don Scott. He knew she was up here with me on a boat at Airlie Beach. You would think he might say, how's it going up there? And how's that idiot or that fuckwit going? Nothing. You would think he deliberately didn't ask how it was going.
Oh, I just got up his nose. It was fantastic to see.
No, it was good.
Well, can I tell you something, Sue? Do you know what I've realised? When that music started at the start of this podcast, I've realised this is part of my therapy now too. You know, every couple of weeks to be able to hear that music start and to jump on the phone and say g'day, I've realised that it's kind of something that I end up craving where I think, all right, well, it's here. It's good for me. It is cathartic.
Well, it's good for us, Doc, because people just can't wait long enough for the two weeks in between you coming on. And just finally, I'm a bit out of the loop up here, but they've ramped up the CFMEU, have they, on 60 Minutes? And
big time, big time. And I'll tell you what, there's a great story. If you go to The Age or the Sydney Morning Herald today, Nick McKenzie has got a story where they've got this top CFMEU official. A bloke comes into his office and hands over $5,000 cash as part of a bit of, bribery, hush money, call it what you want to call it. The CFMEU official receives the money under the table. Now, if someone was giving you $5,000 legitimately in an office environment, you just hand it to them, right? But no, it was passed under a table and then stuffed in this guy's drawer. Only one problem. There was a hidden camera in the roof organised by New South Wales Police and the Australian Federal Police. So they've got the video of the whole thing.
Fantastic.
And you can see it today. So, mate, they're in all sorts of trouble. And the Labor Party today is divorcing the CFMEU, who they've been receiving donations from for decades. They've realised that these thugs and bullies from the CFMEU are giving Labor a bad name. So New South Wales, Victoria and Queensland will all effectively break up from the CFMEU. The relationship will be over. So it should have happened a long time ago, and it's finally happening now.
We interviewed John Setka on the podcast here.
I remember.
And we had to. You mentioned Nick McKenzie. I said something about Nick McKenzie which wasn't true. I misinterpreted it, and Nick McKenzie's lawyer contacted me and said that what you said is incorrect. And I looked it up and I said, you are absolutely correct. I apologise unreservedly. And I said I would take it down off all the podcast, the YouTube, whatever the podcast goes out on. So they had been listening to the interview because he singled out Nick McKenzie, I think, who is gone after John Setka several times in his profession as a journalist. So that's how when you said Nick McKenzie, I remember his name. And I unreservedly apologise because I actually got it wrong.
Well, we don't hear that every day, Sam. On that note, I'm going to love you and leave you
You're
to enjoy the rest of the cruise. I'll talk to you in 2 weeks.
Good on you, Doc.
Okay, bye-bye.
All the best.
Ciao, ciao.
Chow chow. I haven't heard that one for a while.
Chow chow. I remember Hector Crawford. Did you remember Hector Crawford?
No.
Hector Crawford ran Crawford Productions. He was a huge mogul. And a friend of mine who was Italian, she was having a meal with him, or a few people, and he signed a thing saying, you know how the Italians say ciao, C-I-A-O, ciao, I think it's spelled C-I-A-O, ciao. He wrote, so Doc just said then, ciao, ciao. What did he say then?
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao. Hector Crawford wrote on a napkin to this woman, thank you, Nardine, ciao, ciao, and spelt it C-H-O-W, C-H-O-W, ciao, ciao.
Was that her name?
Chow? No, but he was pretending he was Italian and learned in the art of Italian. Chow is not spelled C-H-O-W. That is what you chow down, you eat.
Oh, it could have been maybe Asian name or something like that, Chow.
No, her name was not fucking talking about. All right, well, there you are, Suzanne. So that's it. So the Doc doesn't like my conspiracy theory, but the more he said, I'm not speaking behind his back because he'd know far more. He's a star, isn't he?
Oh, he's a superstar.
He is a superstar. No, we love having him on. I'm telling you, they've turned a blind eye to that. They couldn't believe how luck turned against him when he wasn't shot dead. They'd rejoice, and the gnashing of the teeth and the cow eyes and we're so sorry. They couldn't believe their luck if they shot him dead. And they will. He will never be the 47th president. Someone will shoot him. This I say. Well, there we are. That's it. So we recorded this. How'd you be if I hadn't recorded this?
No, you did okay.
All right. Well, there we are. So that's the Doc.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao, Doc. Ciao, ciao.